everybody, and welcome along to the June edition of the Landlord Lens. This is the ongoing content collaboration between Property Tribes, of which I am the co-founder and also a full-time residential landlord, and the NRLA. And my partner in crime for this webinar is NRLA CEO Ben Beadle. And Ben, well, this is going to be quite a special edition of the Landlord Lens, because our original concept for it was that we were going to tackle some of the trending topics on Property Tribes, the topics that were getting the most traction, the most replies, the most views. And something strange happened in the last few weeks. The NRLA became a trending topic. How did you feel about that, Ben?
Well, it is what it is, right? It's whether it's good or to make the news or not, it's good that people are talking about the matters that concern them, because as I've said before on this very webinar, the problems that concern them are problems that concern me. You know, I am first and foremost a landlord, as you well know, Vanessa. So, you know, we don't get everything right, but I was always very keen to, you know, address some of the things that we can do better, whilst at the same time providing a little bit of explanation about, you know, things that may not have come across about what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and on whose behalf that we're doing it. So I'm really happy that we've got an open forum today, you know, amongst like-minded people that want the best for our industry, and we can have a sensible chat about what that looks like, because crikey, there's a lot coming down the track.
Well, indeed, and I want to say straight off the bat that you came to me and said, Vanessa, I want to address these threads on Property Tribes. And I just really want to say, Ben, I'm not surprised that you did that, because I've known you for over a decade now, and you've also always been very transparent, very open to hearing feedback and wanting to, you know, improve on the back of that. So you were very, very happy to actually have almost like a themed version of the Landlord Lens, just looking at what the community was saying about the NRLA. And we're going to address as many of these comments as we can over the next 45 minutes or so. Now, the first thread was called "The NRLA are calling for property passports." This thread received 75 comments. It was a press release put out by the NRLA, and there was quite a bit of pushback on it, which we are going to discuss. But I think the first thing to clarify, Ben, is that some people were asking, is this kind of a version of the landlord portal that was mentioned in the Queen's speech?
Yeah, so no, no. In short, so the landlord portal, and we will find out more about this on Thursday, because that's when we expect the white paper to be released, and we are talking to Gove's officials tomorrow to understand hopefully a bit more what's going to be in the white paper. So I see this as separate to the portal, because I think the portal is essentially a glorified register of properties, albeit I guess there kind of could be a link with what we have proposed in terms of a property passport. The idea of us calling for this is our informed audience may or may not know that Secretary of State Gove wants a decent homes standard right the way across the rented sector. Now, the decent homes standard exists for the social sector. That's already in place. And actually, 79% of PRS homes already comply with that standard. But the issue with that standard, if it was to be imposed on the private rented sector, and there's still a possibility that it will, and we think it will get a mention on Thursday, is that that's a standard that's designed for the social housing sector. And within that standard are a number of things that we think are rather arbitrary. So it says, and I'm paraphrasing because I've not got the 2006 document in front of me, it's an old document, that after a certain number of years, you need to replace the bathroom or you need to replace the kitchen. And we say, well, just because we've got an avocado green bathroom, as long as that bathroom is safe, functional, working, hazard-free, why rip it out? And so what we have proposed is our property passport idea, which says to ministers and the civil service with whom we've spoken about this, we all want good quality homes. I doubt there's anybody that's listening into this programme that thinks living in a damp category 1 hazard home is an acceptable part of our private rented sector. It's not. But we also hear from our members that from our own research as well that we've discussed here, is that there's 168 pieces of regulation governing the private rented sector. And what we don't want is more of the same. We don't need additional regulation. What we need is for landlords to be able to prove that they comply with stuff that's already out there. And I suspect a lot of them are doing this passport idea anyway, because that's what essentially the law requires you to do. Have a gas safety certificate, give it to your tenant, have an EPC at the point of advertising, have a license, all of those things. So what we're saying is, we don't want the Decent Homes Standard as it's written. We think there should be, or we can see the merits of a standard across the sector, but that needs to be fit for purpose for the private rented sector. And we would hate to see perfectly good bathrooms and kitchens ripped out just because it had an arbitrary time frame around it. But we can well understand that we want that tenants need to feel secure in their homes, that they should be free of damp, that they should be free of category 1 hazard, and that the landlord should be able to easily demonstrate that they're complying with all of the various pieces of regulations that are out there at the moment. And so the property portal idea, the property passport idea, get my teeth in, essentially is a means of landlords being able to prove that they're already compliant. So no more legislation, but simply a tool within which to say, tick, the property you're going to view or moving into complies with everything that it should. All stuff we're doing at the moment.
Okay, well, thank you very much for clarification on that. So often the devil is in the detail. You can't put everything into a press communication. So hence why I think this webinar is going to be so valuable to actually teasing out the issues that members have identified. Now, let's see, there was a kind of straw poll on Property Tribes against this suggestion, and it did seem to be that our community was universally against it. And also there was another poll on Property 118, another forum. They didn't like it either. There was some comments that, more legislation is more expense, which means rents going up even further. Someone said, why aren't you promoting a tenant passport? And there was kind of quite a lot of negativity towards it.
The difficulty is, Vanessa, on the Decent Homes Standard is it's coming. So this isn't a case of, I think it's difficult as an association to disagree with the merits of what a Decent Homes Standard kind of stands for, right? We all, I'm sure, have decent homes that we let that are compliant. And so what we're saying is we think to replicate something for the social housing sector and just drop it on the PRS would be catastrophic. But what we're trying to do is to say, right, we want landlords to be able to evidence that their homes are compliant in an easy to understand way. Now, we've got two options as an association. We can either say, well, we don't want any standard whatsoever, even though all of the things that we put in our pitch are stuff that is the law. We're not asking landlords to do any more. We're simply saying, a nice little badge to say, it meets whatever standard is out there. But so we either say we don't want that, we don't want anything at all, or we say, right, well, we certainly don't want the social Decent Home Standard, but this is how government can achieve what it wants to achieve, and we set out an alternative. It's a little bit like the Rwanda discussion going on at the moment, and stuff on immigration. Lots of people saying it shouldn't happen, no real alternative suggestion. And so what I want to make sure, the best way I can represent landlords is by giving government something to think about. Now, it may well be they don't follow our plans and we end up with a decent home standard anyway. But I think, you know, the idea around this is that it certainly is a far more palatable measure. The ideas that we have taken from our research, from our surveys that we do around the ability to demonstrate compliance than it would be to simply, you know, accept the social housing standard. So I get there's different opinions on this. I mean, you know, as I say, we've got two options. You know, shout from the sidelines and say we shouldn't have anything, or come up with something that could be adopted and allow government to deliver. And we've chosen the latter. But you know, the one thing's for sure, Gove is very, very keen on a decent home standard. This is top of the pile, and I think we might see something, a nod to this later this week. And so, you know, the best way I can represent landlords is by setting out a viable alternative that frankly is much less onerous than what Gove has got planned.
Okay, well, I think that's really helpful to the next kind of consensus which came out from the thread, and that was that it wasn't actually the view of the landlords on the thread that this was a good thing, and that they didn't think that the NRLA was representing their views, and they kind of queried whether you'd actually, you know, gone to the membership and said, what do you think of this? So what do you say to that, Ben?
Well, I think certainly we talk to our members regularly in terms of market sentiment, their habits and what they're feeling. And I think what our members tell us every time is that this is a heavily regulated sector and we don't want any more. The slight difficulty we have is that whether we are for, against or on the fence when it comes to a decent home standard, there will be a standard of some description. And so the best way that we can kind of represent landlords is to set out an achievable standard that takes our members' concerns into consideration, because we're not proposing any new regulation or legislation in this. We are saying there is shed loads of regulation out there. Let's bring it together in a way that good landlords are already doing, and simply show to the punter that the house they're moving into or going to view is compliant. Now, I get that there might be a different school of thought about, you know, the merits of that, but, you know, I give my tenants a gas certificate before they move in. I have an EPC before they move in. I show them a copy of my license. It's on a register. I give them a copy of the EICR. I suspect landlords are already doing the things that we have set out. And so rather than simply go to government without any ideas and, you know, frankly, we in the wind, we've gone to government with something that we think could be adopted. Now, government may not adopt that. They may simply adopt a very hard line when it comes to a standard, but that will be significantly worse than the proposals that we put together. So I hear what people are saying, and I think one of the things that that listeners may well have noticed in our most recent survey that's gone out in the last couple of weeks is this idea of a landlord panel, where we can have a more engaged group of members looking at some of these policy items. For reference, we do have something called an independent advisory board that's made up with a number of local associations up and down the country. It was previously the Fair Possessions Coalition before Section 21 was decided to be abolished a few years ago. So we have that group together. But if there's one thing I kind of hear from all of this is that I think some individual members would like to have a little bit more input over and above the surveys that are out there. And I hear that loud and clear. And if you do complete the survey that I think was either sent around last weekend or the weekend before, there's the option to express an interest in that. And I'd be very pleased to hear from people, because, you know, we don't want to add to landlords' burden. We want to make it a better place for landlords and renters to be able to exist in. But I'm afraid the direction of travel we are like salmon swimming up a stream at the moment. There is a lot coming down the track, and not all of it, frankly, is good. But it's an important time to be part of a trade body that has got access to ministers and civil servants and can put across your concerns. And there will be schools of thought about how effectively we do this, but I'm a pragmatist. I'm not going to be that person that wants to wheel everybody out on the street and march on Downing Street. I'd much rather be able to come up with solutions that bring good landlords along as part of government's journey, as well as delivering the reform agenda for renters. Because as you know, time has changed. This isn't about tax breaks and incentives for landlords, unfortunately, even though I'm a regular critic. Government policy has come home to roost. High rents, decreasing stock, everybody under the cosh, and they still want to flog off houses to tenants of housing associations that will diminish the stock even further. So we have to work with what we've got, and that's kind of the way that I've set out. I'd much rather be the person that's got some ideas that are less bad than they would ordinarily have been. I get that's not everyone's viewpoint.
Well, in the comments, Brian B has said, if you're a good compliant landlord, then surely you don't have anything to worry about. Well, absolutely spot on, Brian. Some people on the thread were saying that, they're worried how this property passports will be enforced, because we already have a huge amount of legislation, and it's mostly not enforced due to lack of resources. So that was one comment. I think we're going to move on to the next topic now, Ben, but just to end on a positive note, because I do want this to be balanced. It wasn't universally across the board slated. One landlord said, I support this property passports initiative. It will help raise standards and clean up the sector to the less reputable operators that we all know are out there, and give landlords a bad name. So that was the kind of positive side of what was discussed on Property Tribes on this particular thread.
That's helpful. Just to deal with Brian's sort of wider point there very briefly, Vanessa, I do agree with that. We are presented with lots of examples. I say lots, a minority of landlords that aren't doing the things that we would expect, and frankly that is, it's ruining it for everybody. The wider point on enforcement, though, is an important one, and we've been banging on about this. We think that, so we've been highlighting that local authorities, even though they have plenty of powers, they're not using the powers that they have, and that's because of years of austerity. Local authorities have been absolutely run ragged. We all know the reasons behind it, but they've also become addicted to licensing and the easy cash that brings. And I think we want to see a couple of things. We want to see enforcement and local authorities funded properly so that the sector works. And if we do see this kind of register idea, and that I think is what the portal is. If we do see this portal idea, then I'm afraid the quid pro quo has to be that some elements of licensing have to fall by the wayside. And so we've set that out very clearly in our Decent Homes proposal, that this is carrot and stick in equal measure. Let's let good landlords show that they're doing a good job, and let's make sure that local authorities are properly resourced, and the nonsense around licensing is the quid pro quo, because I don't want to have double up.
Okay, excellent. Well, let's move on to the second trending topic, which had the shall we say rather emotive title of "Is anyone else cancelling their NRLA membership?" This had 63 responses. The person that started this thread, the reason that they gave that they were cancelling was that the NRLA gave minor wrong information about the new Renting Homes Act Wales, and they feel that the NRLA has lost its way a little bit and is constantly trying to sell training courses. Now, Ben, I think we should discuss here the NRLA business model, because I'm sure I'm not out of turn in saying that if you just relied on membership subscriptions, you wouldn't be able to survive. You've got to have some additional commercial income streams, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, we have. There's no question about that. We're growing as an organisation, and we're at just over 97,000 members now, Vanessa. But you know, we can't rely on subscriptions alone, and also, you know, we want to make sure that our members have access to the best services, that we've you know, vetted them, that they're appropriate, that we leverage our size to get members the, you know, the best possible deals. Now on training, again, you know, we have a panel of trainers that do training for us. It's recognised by Rent Smart Wales and other such organisations. But our training is, you know, typically less than £100, and we've discussed some training that isn't £100 on this very webinar. Sometimes they have a couple of zeros at the end and make you get rich quick, but don't. So, you know, I think we want to make sure that we support landlords on training. But just to, I think that email could have been worded better, if I'm brutally honest with you, Vanessa, about the Renting Homes Wales stuff, and I think we've tidied that up. But the one thing I would say is we do have information events and we do have training, and so the information events for members are free, and they're run by our dedicated Wales team. I think we've got something going on every 3 weeks that people can dial into and listen to, and the Welsh Government are supporting us on that. And when I say support, they're not paying us for it, but they are putting up a senior civil servant to be able to hear landlords' concerns and talk through some of the problems and answer questions. Now, what we've seen in recent weeks, and all the weeks are merging into one at the moment, so it may have been a few weeks ago now, but we saw the Renting Homes Wales Act push back from its July implementation date to December, and you know, that will cause frustration for the people that were ready, and it will cause a sigh of relief for the people that aren't ready. This is a dog's dinner, and it's really important that there is a proper lead-in time. And we were pushing for a greater lead-in time because actually what we were told was that there would be 6 months between kind of progressing the bill into an act and actual implementation. But the way that it panned out was that we were waiting for all of this secondary legislation to come through, and it would have been a matter of a few weeks between launching. Now, you know, so we've had a little part to play in that, and some people will like it and some people won't. But back to your original point, you know, we do things. We have commercial arrangements so that we can invest in the membership, do more research, promote the interests of landlords, because we do a lot of research, but I'm afraid it costs actually quite a lot of money to be able to do this stuff. As you would have seen from the capital economics stuff, we've got research going on at the moment about the role of the private rented sector, and with capital economics about the financial contribution of landlords, and we are using that to inform the autumn budget, such as, you know, the lead time on some of this stuff. So attend a free information event by, you know, if you wish, but if you want to get some sort of CPD certification, etc., then there is a modest charge for some of the training that we do.
Actually, just highlighting one of those free educational resource events, that's the National Landlord Investment Show, which is taking place at Billingsgate Market. I believe it is on
the 5th of July.
And actually you and I will be there. We're speaking on a panel debate, aren't we? And I do recommend these days out. They're great for networking, they're great for increasing your property knowledge. We're both fans of those, but then, you know, as you stated, there are some paid training options, and as you also rightly stated, compared to the other side of the property training fence, which is what we call the property gurus, the get rich quick wealth creation industry, your training days are very reasonably priced, and they're actually taught by people who have been landlords for decades, not somebody that's been in the game for, you know, a year.
They're an expert.
So this is, I think, part of the problem that you know, we need to make these distinctions. They're two, I regard those two things as two entirely separate things, that they're not related to each other at all. The NRLA provides credible, in-depth training at a reasonable cost. And that is something that everybody should consider taking. You know, there's a good choice of online courses and whatnot out there as well.
I should say, Vanessa, we don't make a lot of money out of the training. If
Well, I was
anyone's
going to say,
interested, yeah, the margins are very slim.
yeah.
But it does add to the overall package of, or for me anyway, about helping landlords get better at what they do, and frankly, not getting ripped off by some of the other operators that exist out there in the market. But there are a number of really good other training providers that members and non-members will want to use. Yeah, you've got the choice to do it. All I would say is we operate on a not-for-profit basis. Every penny of what we make goes back into the running of the business to do more things, more creative things, more innovative things, and to try and get yeah, a better deal for landlords. It's a virtuous circle, but I appreciate, you know, it may not be for everyone.
Well, one of the other criticisms that came up a couple of times, Ben, was that the NRLA only provide a service to self-managing landlords. There was some feeling that, you know, the smaller landlord who probably has properties managed by a letting agent, that they weren't really catered to. I don't see that myself, because I'm one of the landlords that has a reasonable sized portfolio that's managed by agents, and I couldn't see that. What do you say about the NRLA only providing a service to self-managing landlords?
Yeah, well, interestingly, we do have a bit of polling on this from the research that we do, and it's about 50-50 within the knocking on for 100,000 members that we've got. You know, roughly half self-manage and roughly half use an agent, or use an agent sometimes. And what I would say is, I don't think using an agent and being a member of NRLA is mutually exclusive, because as we all know, you know, we're carrying the can in terms of liability. And how frequently do we see on sort of chats about, you know, my agent's done this, that, and the other, and you know, it's coming back to bite me on the bum. So I think, you know, I get that you might have an agent to exercise some of your duties, and that may mean that you don't use our referencing or things like that. But I think, you know, keeping ahead of the game is really, really important, whether you've got one house, one home, or 10 or whatever. That's a significant asset. And you know, I think I would want to be I'm a self-managing landlord. I always have been. I'm far too tight to pay an agent, as you probably know, Vanessa. But I therefore look to you know, for as many sort of, you know, favorable suppliers and services to be able to help me on that journey. But if you are using an agent, the advice line could be, you know, equally helpful for you. The tax investigation insurance, that if you get pulled by the tax man to have your taxes investigated, that's included as part of your membership. Some other things will be just as important whether you're managing or self-managing, particularly the lobbying, because you know, otherwise you know, we and I get that, you know, there's some criticisms out there about, you know, how we might go about campaigning and lobbying and some of the issues that we do that on. But these are all things that are up for grabs. And, you know, we are talking to ministers and civil servants about the issues that matter to our members. So it's for me far less about the services and far more about the industry knowledge and representation for your membership fee than it is anything else. But you know, the proof will be in the eating. And I think if there's probably a discount code on your website somewhere, Vanessa, for those that want to give it a little bit of a try. Yeah, we want a fairer environment for landlords, and frankly, we're protecting against some, you know, the obliteration of the private rented sector. If you listen to the words that come out of Johnson and Gove's mouth at the moment, you know, this is a difficult time to be a landlord, and it's really important that landlords' voices are heard, and you can influence that, and we have, you know, excellent access.
Well, you mentioned about the importance of education, and going back to basics, back to the beginning, Ben, that's why you and I put our heads together to come up with this webinar, because we felt, this webinar was born sort of to about halfway through COVID. And we realized that the risks for landlords were massively amplified. And then we've got Brexit, and we've got the Russian-Ukraine war, and we're now going into an inflationary environment, and all the other stuff that's happening. Landlords do need to be educated, and Property Tribes and the NRLA are actually very similar. I describe them as a trusted ecosystem where landlords can go and get everything that they need. And an ecosystem is a very healthy place to be. And that is a very good reason to join the NRLA. And indeed, you do add your voice to the lobbying power of the NRLA. Just to finish on this one, Ben, the number one thing that people had a bit of a beef with the NRLA about was that they say you should be doing a lot more to oppose selective licensing schemes. Yep. Some people had a bit of rhetoric about how you actually jump into bed with local authorities, offering, CPD points for being part of different training schemes that are to do with licensing, etc. Yep. What is your comeback to that?
So my view is, those two things in the way they're constructed within the business are totally separate. So we have within the policy and campaigning team, a local authority specialist that will respond to consultations, hopefully every consultation that's out there. But the slight difficulty is around something like licensing is that, providing you meet the criteria that's there, there's very little that one can do to argue against it, which is why I see the Renters Reform Bill as, if there is a direction of travel towards registration, then I see that as being a really good opportunity to get rid of some elements of local licensing. And we've spoken about this on this before, Vanessa. I am a HMO landlord. The issues for me around licensing is that there is no demonstrable link between licensing and improved standards. And this is part of our problem on the enforcement regime, that you probably got people that are processing, lots of licenses, gaining lots of money, but losing sight of the actual decent home standard element that's so important. That's what licensing is there to do. So my certificates all say, well, here's your certificate, but this is not evidence of a suitable standard or of an inspection taking place. So I hear people loud and clear on licensing, but the underlying legislation, providing a local authority meets their application, all we will be able to do is, make it smaller. We won't be able to make licensing go away, but I do think there's an opportunity with the Renters Reform Bill to remove some elements there. We just have to see the detail of what that looks like later this week, which I'm told is now Thursday, by the way. But in terms of then jumping into bed with a local authority, that's why we have a separate policy and commercial team under different directors. And for me, it's about, once the local authority has taken a decision on licensing and how that's going to work and what area it covers, it's then about supporting landlords in that area to make sure that they are compliant and understand the rules of the game, even if we disagree with them. And so, you can look at a lot of what we do and say, well, we disagree with Section 21. Well, we've set out an alternative, and when the white paper comes out, that will be that, and we'll be talking to landlords about how they can cope in the new environment. So I understand that it might look like that, but the reality is, what we can't do is is stop everything that's coming down the track. We can water it down, we can make it more palatable to a point, but then we've got to engage with landlords about meeting their obligations, because we don't want landlords to fall foul of new things that come in. So I get that they might appear slightly contradictory, but rest assured the policy team have been told to pursue all elements of licensing as robustly as they need to. There's no conflict between any arrangements that we have with local authorities.
Okay, well, thank you for clarification on that important point. I think, what's so great about, social media discussion, public domain commentary, is that everybody can have their say. It's totally transparent, and it's really important to read both views, take them in, try them on, see what works for you, and then form your own opinion from the debate as it teases out those important issues. And this thread was actually about 50% positive towards NRLA. Lots of people saying they were renewing their membership. I just wanted to touch very briefly on the reasons why they were renewing, because I think they're important. You mentioned this, Ben. Membership includes tax investigation insurance. That's so important. If you get investigated by HMRC, it could cost you thousands and thousands of pounds. These investigations can go on for 2-3 years. So that's just one reason alone to be a member of the NRLA. Another member said that they use their membership as a selling point to prospective tenants. They believe that it provides assurance and confidence to the tenant to rent through them, which I think is a very good point. Somebody else said the free webinars are excellent. Yay! Because you've been doing a lot of those, Ben. You've done a lot of content collabs. I think this is part of your remit when you came on board as the CEO. You were very, very keen on increasing the digital footprint of the NRLA and doing these various different content collaborations to reach a wider audience, and that is being appreciated. Another member said, I've been a member of the NRLA for 15 years and will continue to be a member. It gave me confidence on my rental journey. So that's a very important point. And then somebody else said that they love the NRLA for all the services you offer, and particularly some of the discounted services, and also the Trade Point discount card. So as Ben mentioned, because there's numbers and there's strength in numbers, the more members the NRLA has, the bigger discounts they'll be able to achieve in their commercial partner offerings, and also obviously the louder their voice at Westminster for lobbying. So that was kind of an overview of that thread. Of course, they're still on Property Tribes if you want to go and view them, if you want to go and dive in and have your say, that's what it's there for. A couple of people saying that I've been mentioning chats. Yes, I've used the wrong terminology there. We are taking questions in the Q&A. So if you've got anything to say or any questions you want answered, please do dive on the Q&A. We're keeping an eye on it. And now we're just going to move on to the final trending topic about the NRLA. And this was community generated list of policies. And this only had 16 responses, but some really good things came out of it. I'm just going to quickly whiz through them, Ben, and you can pick up on the ones that you like the sound of. A common one was that they do want you to do more lobbying. Another one was that people want you to counter Shelter's rhetoric about landlords, their anti-landlord rhetoric. Another one,
I suspect that's what Shelter want.
Another one said they would like you to undertake a monthly survey to find the real reasons why landlords are issuing a Section 21, so that the NRLA has its own data on this topic. I thought that was an excellent suggestion. Others were saying they would like you to beef up your marketing and social media teams so that you can have a much bigger presence on the web. Others were saying they want EPCC rating legislation coming out in 2025 at the moment. They want you to do your best to get that scrapped. There was the old chestnut of revisiting Section 24 and campaigning against that. There was encouraging enforcement of existing legislation, which we've touched on already.
Yeah.
And finally, oh no, there's a few more. There was please ask your landlords before you make policy decisions. That was another one. And let me see, somebody was saying they would like to see a separate housing court system set up for obviously gaining possession. And another comment was that the NRLA has stated that 88% of tenants are happy with their homes, and this commentator felt that the NRLA should make much more of this point in the media.
So let me, what time are we? We're 22. So let me see how many I can whiz through. So enforcement, I think we've done. We've kind of been at the forefront of highlighting this this issue. Just hope it doesn't come back and bite us on the bum and end up with loads of prosecutions. But we do think that's going to be important. The Section 24 issue is a big issue. And it's the very reason why we have all the nonsense going on at the moment. As you know, I am a personal victim of Section 24. I weep furiously on the 31st of January as I make my payment, and I won't do it any earlier on principle. But I think, we've had to kind of read the room on this, folks, to be honest with you. It's not been the right time to be calling for tax breaks. What we have been doing is highlighting the perverse nature of incentivizing short-term lets rather than long-term sustainable renting. And there's a question in the chat about stamp duty. We've also been trying to promote the private rented sector with the things that are coming down the track as being able to add to the net supply of new homes that are available. And the way that we would like to see that working is with some form of incentives that encourage investment, because at the moment government clearly has a downer on the private rented sector, yet they haven't really backed another horse, and I don't consider the build to rent sector as being big enough or significant enough in terms of being backed. So if I keep bleating on about this, but if every property in the build to rent sector gets built, that will only equate to 4% of the overall housing stock in the UK. But the private rented sector is at 19%, and we've got 1.2 million people on social housing lists with no social homes being built. It feels to me that we need a little bit of everything. We need some social homes to be built. We need the private rented sector, perhaps with the a revised environment that Gove will set out on Thursday. And within that, there needs to be, we need to understand that landlords will be able to move faster than any big house building policy if the tax levers are used in the right way. And we had a meeting with Rishi Sunak's officials a few weeks ago, the Office of Tax Simplification, lots of conversations being had about this. We'll see what happens on Thursday. The EPC rating is something I don't think will go away. I don't think there's a prospect of it being scrapped, to be honest with you. I do think there is a prospect of reducing the proposed 10K cap, having a longer lead-in period, and having an EPC system that's fit for purpose and actually sensible, which are the things that we have been heavily lobbying on in the past few months. And it's part of the reason why we haven't yet seen an announcement. We understand that there is a draft policy that has been signed off by Bays that is currently stuck at number 10 and not going any further. So so a lot of work been going on about this. In terms of asking landlords on policy positions, I would encourage everybody to do two things. One, get involved in the surveys that we send round. These are member surveys. We do some polling of non-members privately, but if a survey comes through, it normally takes a little while, but it really, really helps the policy position, because we're not, and I get that there are concerns about the decent homes standard, but what we have done is take what landlords have told us about we don't want any more regulation. We want to use things that are kind of already there and construct that into policy ideas that would be reflective of the views of membership. But I also hear that people want a little bit more than that. So the second thing I'd encourage is on the email that came round within the last couple of weeks, inviting a survey. If you go through the survey, there's the option to express your interest in a landlord panel. And I'm very keen to get this set up so that grassroots landlords have greater say in some of the things that we are doing and saying. That's one thing I've heard very, very loudly.
Yes, actually, Ben, Jonathan C has said, could you reissue that recent questionnaire?
Yes.
Missed that one. And I think because we've created a bit of a platform for this kind of discussion via this webinar, I think it would be good if you could maybe resend the questionnaire, perhaps with a link to this webinar when it's online on the NRLA YouTube channel, because it will end up there if you want to rewatch it, if you missed anything, or you want to comment on the video.
Yeah, I've been trying to find it whilst I'm talking, but I'm not very good at multitasking. So I can't find it, but I will make sure that maybe we can put it on a link on the PT thread when we publish it. Anyway, housing court, yes, and we are expecting a response to the consultation in the white paper on Thursday. And for those of you that saw Gove's appearance at the Levelling Up committee on yesterday, where he told everybody that the white paper was coming this week, he also did two things, which I thought was quite helpful. One, he acknowledged that landlords waiting a year to get possession of their property was too long. Well, that's good news with all of after all of the nonsense he's been spouting in recent weeks. I was quite pleased to hear that. And the second thing, Andrew Lewis, MP, asked him about speeding up that process and a housing court, and he said that he would be making a comment about the consultation exercise. And I think there is a real direction of travel towards local conciliation, i.e. before you get to court, trying to resolve those issues, but an appreciation, and I hope that it will be linked to strengthened Section 8 grounds, which we hope to see on Thursday as well, towards more speedier justice. Because I do think, as you know, Vanessa, Section 21 going, I don't think will make a blind bit of difference to the vast majority of landlords that are out there. There will still be grounds for rent arrears, significant rent arrears, landlords moving back in, landlords selling, and antisocial behaviour. So, and the government has already committed to strengthening some of those things as well. So we do need to make sure that the environment is appropriate for landlords to get possession of their property back. So I don't think Section 21 going is going to cure half the things that that Shelter thinks it will. And then coming on to Shelter, yes, I did respond a few weeks ago to one of the more outrageous things that they had put out. I have to say, I don't tend to get too excited when Shelter put things out. And the reason I don't is because I suspect it will add credence to some of their arguments. Well, landlords come out and say this, landlords come out and say that. That's probably the sort of thing that they would want us to do. But I forget it was a notice issued every 7 minutes. That nonsense, which I felt particularly strongly about. And between you, me, and the couple of hundred people listening in, I'm meeting Polly on Monday to discuss that letter and some of their stances. So that may well be a topic for a future at Landlord Lens. So I don't jump up and down every 5 minutes, but when it needs calling out, we are prepared to call it out. I don't think that particular statement really advanced the cause in the way that they hoped it would be my observation. So I hear all of those things. They're all things that are on our radar. So if I take a couple of things away, it's kind of bringing individuals a bit closer to some of the policy making, which is a definite commitment to doing, and certainly making sure that our messaging around some of this stuff lands more appropriately than it has done. And I wouldn't be breaching confidences by saying that we have already made some changes in recent weeks to both the marketing function and the comms function. So I hope that those comments have been heard. Well, I don't hope, I know they've been heard loud and clear by me. And so, now is the time for us really to, bring more people into the fold, because if we can't, stop some or influence some of the nonsense that's coming down the track, actually, we might all, be better off going out to buy premium bonds, frankly, than investing in property. So I think there's a real risk at the moment of multiple things coming down the track, and it's so important that we have as many landlords as part of our organisation as possible, so that we can convey the genuine concerns that many landlords have. And those landlords will be able to ask the Minister directly in November at our conference in Coventry, where the direction of travel, he can explain himself and take all of your questions. 15th of November at the Coventry Arena.
Yeah, and tickets are available now, and over on Property Tribes we do have a 10% discount code for early bird registrations. I think, Ben, your open letter to shelter went down very well with the Property Tribes community. Everybody thought you put in a very, very robust response. And I think, and I hope that everybody today has really appreciated your openness and your transparency and being willing to face this constructive feedback, because neither of us regard any of these things as criticism. We're grateful that people have taken their time to actually raise these issues to help you better guide the direction of the NRLA. And I have to say, Ben, I really do think you lead by example in what you do, and that's a personal comment from me to you, because I've known you many years, over a decade now, and wherever you've been, you've always been very open, very approachable, and very transparent, and always wanting to assist and make our sector better. You have a long track record of doing that. So I just want to thank you for being so open and approachable on the webinar today. And I hope everybody's got value from it. And please do jump into the Q&A, anybody. If you do have any questions, we've got just a couple of minutes shortly just to answer any questions you have.
And Vanessa, I think, thank you for that. I mean, at the end of the day, we're a people business and we're a membership organisation. We're nothing without the people that literally nothing without the people that we represent. So if we can do things better, I'm all ears. I like to do these types of events. I like to do the public facing events like we're doing together at Billingsgate on the 5th of July and doing Facebook lives and that sort of stuff. But it's important to me that we represent landlords in the right sort of way. But people's ability to exercise free speech is important and have their say, as long as that's in a professional context. Then I'm literally all ears about how we can get better at what we do. But we had a case, if I take a little segue now for a moment on this very issue, about the balance between free speech and defamation in the last few days. Do you want to fill listeners in on that?
Yeah, well, thank you for giving me the opportunity just to mention this, Ben, because it does kind of seeg into what we've been saying, because certain parts of our sector do lack in transparency, do lack in freedom of speech. Content is very much controlled. Negative commentary, or what is perceived to be negative commentary or criticism, is framed as being some kind of hater or neghead or something like that. So yeah, there's a case that was settled this week in the High Court. It was a defamation case between multimillionaire businessman Aaron Banks and a journalist by the name of Carol Cadwallader, who writes for the Observer, among many other papers. But it really was a victory for the little guy. And the judge ruled that Carol could use the defence of in the public interest, because she made some references to Mr. Banks' activities and connections with dubious Russian characters on her TED talk about 3 years ago. It's taken this long to come through to fruition, this case. But as some of you may know, I myself am facing a defamation court case. And there's actually quite a lot of similarities between what's happened with Carol and what happened with me. And one of the things was that Carol was kind of subjected to, personal threats, abuse, trolling, misogynistic content online. That's happened to me. Carol was able to use her defence in the public interest, which is one of my defences in my case. The actual claimant did not go after the publisher, i.e. TEDx or the Observer. He went after the journalist, knowing that she could probably not afford her legal costs to defend herself. And Carol went and got crowdfunding for her case, and that's what I've been doing. So I just wanted to say, with Ben's kind permission, I'm going to pop my crowd justice link into the chat box, because I'd really appreciate anybody that feels that I add value to the private sector, if you could go and have a look at what's happening to me with my legal case. And if you think it's a worthy cause, please do make a donation and be a supporter of me. Carol had over 800,000 donated to her costs. She's won, so she's going to get all her costs back. My legal battle probably going to cost me somewhere in the region of 650,000. So
bloody hell, really?
Yeah, that's how much it costs to defend the legal case in the High Court against defamation. It's such complex law, and it's the most expensive form of litigation. And a lot of people use what's known as lawfare, use defamation cases to shut down public interest commentary. Actually, London is known as the libel capital of the world, because all the wealthy people come here to try their cases because they can afford to shut down the little guy. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind looking at my link and showing some support and love for me, that would be so appreciated. And Ben, thank you to you for your stance. I know you've got my back, and that means a lot to me, and I'm really eternally grateful to you and everybody that's supported my case.
Bless you. I'm feeling my donation is insufficient compared. I had no idea it cost that money, and I think it's absolutely right that we raise awareness of some of this nonsense. We spoke about training and get rich quick, and frankly, folks, you need to be careful about who you're jumping into bed with, if I put it in those terms, because as I've said before on this, the training, the training doesn't have to be expensive. And I get, there's some criticisms for NRLA around doing it, but our training is around 100 quid, right? Frankly, take it or leave it. It's up to you. I'd much rather make sure that you're in better hands than one of these fly-by-nights that are out there promising all things to everybody but failing to deliver. So we will continue to highlight injustices like this on this piece. And can I thank everybody for their feedback about my own association and how we can do better.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to add, the wealth creation industry is totally unregulated, so it's only community generated due diligence resources and commentary like those provided by myself, the Property Tribes community, other commentators on social media. We are the thin line between potential financial loss and the kind of resources that I've produced have hopefully helped people make wise choices about where to go and get training from. So if you support freedom of speech and commentary in the public interest, then thank you very much, and I hope you'll jump across to my crowd justice link. Let's just see if we've got any questions as we wrap this up. Is Maria there? Is she gonna jump on and let us know if there's anything that needs an answer? Hi, Maria.
Hi. Yeah, we've had a few questions, mostly comments, but a few
I tried to
questions.
answer a few as Vanessa was talking, actually, about disaggregation of council tax and Section 21 and our stance on that. Anything else I've missed?
I noticed the one from George T about making tax digital. Will the NRLA be providing some software?
Yes.
That's going to help landlords integrate to MTD?
We will, and we will be launching something quite interesting at the end of the summer, hopefully in time for my birthday, that will allow landlords to manage their properties better with a fully integrated solution. And one of the modules to follow will be about gathering your receipts, your expenses, and a link to making tax digital. So yes, that's something coming down the track.
Excellent.
Anything else, Maria, that I need to answer?
I think we've covered everything that's been asked already.
Well, if there is, I've tried my best to answer as we go. My email is ben@nrla.org.uk, ben@nrla.org.uk. If I've missed some, and Leslie, I will follow up with you directly about the conference and see what we can do for you. But if there's anything else that I haven't answered, then please feel free to drop me a line.
Yeah, well done for giving out your email address, Ben. Again, I think that just shows how open you are. And I think it's a great way to end this webinar. And thank you to everybody that's joined us. We don't want this to be the end of the discussion. We want this to actually be the beginning. So please do continue to engage with the NRLA, and they're on all social media channels. You can go and follow them there and engage with the NRLA there. And I don't know when our next Landlord Lens is, Ben. I'm not sure if we've got a date in the diary yet, have we?
Well, we should. Hopefully, we'll have a July one. I think we'll have an August break. I'm just having a quick squiz in my diary, but I can't see it. Maybe we could do it from Old Billingsgate. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, like we did with the
yes.
That's not a bad shout, actually.
There will be one in July, folks. Yes, indeed.
Board of landlords. What is it called when there's a big group of landlords together?
Oh, a gaggle? I don't know. A mob.
And on that note, we'll say thank you to everybody for joining us today. We do hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you around the social web, or indeed we'll see you at Billingsgate at the National Landlord Investment Show. I think it's on the 5th of July. Ben and I will both be there. Please come and say hello to us, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody somewhere down the property trail.
All the best, folks.